Hello, everyone. Welcome to Automating Success. I'm your host, Joe Langton. Today, I have Ajay Sunkara on the phone or the call with me. Um, he is the owner of Nala Robotics, and I think you guys are going to be super interested to know what his automated solution is covering. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about the automation that you have developed for the food industry?
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. And I'm Ajay Sunkara, the CEO and the co-founder for Nala Robotics. The project for Nala, it started with a passion to automate the food making process. It's pretty much started to make consistent food. No matter where you go, to have your own kind of palette being addressed in every continent, every city. Without being dependent on human intervention in terms of the amount of spices, the amount of ingredients that are being dispensed into that. So the idea started with why don't we automate the food making thing in a way that we can be scaled all across. So any recipe that's once it's entered into the system should be able to be replicated all across the world. That's how the idea for Nala started. And as we went down the lane with our R&D, we came across multiple robotic solutions for multiple cuisines. Today, we have 4 commercial products that have been launched, and a few of them are still in the pipeline that will be launched later this year and early next year.
So that's amazing. One of the things that I always like to talk to people about, and I said this many times, is automation provides you control, right? And so you just said once you enter in kind of the parameters, how to make a dish or make something, it's always the same, right? So you get replication very easily. So take me through the process, because I know myself what got me into the automation space, but what made you one day wake up and say, we need to automate a process? I mean, you said it, you kind of broke into it, but usually there's a problem being solved. So what did you see as a problem in the space, and why did you decide you were going to solve it?
So the idea started with when I was visiting one of my breweries. I own a couple of beer factories in India. It's in the remote part of India where finding good food is always a challenge. There's no major restaurants around, so finding good food was always a challenge there. So one day I was at this factory, at the sensory room, tasting the beers, and they were like, "This is from yesterday's batch. This is from the day before," and pretty much every pint there was tasting the same. That's where I felt like the machines and the factory is fully automated with all precise quantities being dispensed by all these sensors and machines. So why can't we automate the food making process in a way that I can have a consistent food no matter every time I visit this factory? So that's where the idea started. When I came back to the US, I sat with my friend and the co-founder for Nala, Vijay Korali. He is currently the CTO for the company as well. And so we started working on this idea. We brainstormed a lot, formed a team, and it's been 6 years now that this happened. And right now we have products, as I mentioned, that are commercially available that can be scaled across fine dining or QSR or any restaurant that needs automation.
Okay, so you had the idea. So let's break this down. So you had the idea, you come, you talk about it. 6 years later, here we are. Take me down that 6-year journey then, right? Because a lot of people think, well, they had the idea, now they're in the automation space, right? But the real work happened in that 6 years. So can you take us down that pathway?
Oh, sure, yeah. So year one was all about how do we automate this? Where do we start? With in terms of I come from a computer science background, and Vijay comes from an electronics background. So we do have a little bit of engineering, within our field. But it's more of like when we talk about automation and robotics, it's mainly mechanical, electromechanical kind of a field. So we started working on hiring the teams, forming hiring an architect to basically design this project. And this all started with let's automate one dish. It was never about automating for for the entire industry in general. It started with let's automate one dish and let's see how it works. And as we started working on this project, we realized the scope of it. We realized that this is more than one dish or one particular task. This can be scaled across the world. And then we hit the pandemic, and that changed everything for us. Forming the teams and everything, was halted. The R&D has halted for a while, but the scope of the entire project also has changed. It changed from why don't we just automate for consistency to the hygiene aspect of it. People now are more worried about like who's touching their food, how the hygiene part of the environments that the food is being made. It also created an opportunity for what we call ghost kitchens now. The ghost kitchens have popped up a lot, so people really want food to be delivered to their houses. They don't want to wait in long lines or drive to a restaurant anymore. So the entire scope of the restaurant industry or the culinary industry in general has changed, and all these things helped us stream our project into automating it for both consistency, hygiene, as well as the other necessity or the requirement of what the pandemic created was the shortage of labor. Ever since 2020, as you all know, that there's a huge shortage of labor across every industry, and the restaurant industry in particular has struggled with it a lot. Similarly, in the UK, we actually have this Brexit that was happening, and half the calls that we get right now are from the UK because they're having a huge shortage of manpower there. And all these things helped us, gather our streamline our requirements and develop it in a way that we can address now the hygiene, the shortage of labor, as well as the consistency of food.
So if I owned a restaurant right now, let's say, for instance, I own a pizza place, right? Does your system fit into that, or is it more based on like the prep, the beginning side? So explain where you fit in and how circular it is. Does it take a dish from start to finish, or is it feeding like the kind of the beginning, like the sliced tomatoes or the diced tomatoes? How does it work?
So pizza is a good example to start with. We do have our pizza solution called the Pizzaiola, and the way it works is it would take the ingredients that are already being delivered by your food service provider. It might be Cisco Foods, US Foods. So you have hundreds of them across the US who would deliver the ingredients cut into pieces that you want, and that's where we would come in and we would take the dough, press the dough. Stretch it to whatever size you want, 12 inches, 14 inches. We even do up to 28 inches now. And then we would add some sauce into it, spread the sauce, put all the ingredients based on whatever your requirement was, in terms of your pizza. Put it into the oven. It can be a conventional oven, or it can be any specialized oven that you want. And once the pizza is out of the oven, we cut it, box it, and then give it out for the delivery apps to be taken or delivered to the customer.
Okay. So if you're a founder or an owner, however you look at it at the pizza place, all they have to do is input how they do it themselves then, because, you brought up something earlier, and there's a local pizza place. I actually know the owner, so I think about it all the time. I know when they're working versus one of their other cooks, right? And sometimes they leave it in the oven a little too long. Sometimes they take it out a little too early. So kind of explain, like, if I want to do this, let's say I was that owner and I want to do it, how long does it take to get it implemented? I bring it in. What parameters do we need to go through and preset? I'm assuming it runs in parallel for a while with people. So explain that process to the listeners.
Sure. Pizza is a very beautiful world. It has hundreds of varieties. For instance, I'm from Chicago, and we have the deep dish.
New York. I can bring this up from Woodstock, Illinois. So I say I'm from Chicago, but I'm a suburb. So we're close to each other.
Wonderful. So. Yeah. So and you have New York style. You have multiple other styles across the world. So the way it is like we have multiple varieties of pizzas, like the Chicago deep dish. You have the New York style and multiple other styles across the world. Our solution has to be tweaked according to what your parameters are. For instance, the size of your the thickness of your crust, the size of the ingredients to be dispensed, the type of sauce you want. So you have multiple other parameters that you normally as a pizza restaurant would need. And with our solution, we tweak it. We give a standard solution, but the standard solution can be tweaked according to whatever parameters that the client gives us. And once it's done, it's more of like uh, you know changing or loading your ingredients according to your specs, and running your restaurant from there on. Typically the process would take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending, again, it depends on your county as well, or your health department, where based on whatever applies for you. uh, Typically in the Chicagoland area, for instance, like DuPage County takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months. Somewhere else, it might be longer or shorter, in fact. So I would say we have to be ready for at least 3 to 6 months from start to finish.
Right. So then, and then how does someone get the system then? Do you guys do your system like in a subscription model? Do you sell it directly? What's your go-to-market strategy with the system?
We have multiple options for getting the system installed. The first one is straightforward, cash and carry kind of a thing, where they would come in, buy our system, we would install it at their location, and there would be a monthly or a yearly maintenance fee for that. The second solution is a rental model, where they would lease it from us on a month-to-month basis, and once the rental is done, we would take the system back if they don't want it. And the third model that we have is what we call Robot as a Service. That hasn't been launched at the third model, but that applies mainly to ghost kitchens and large commissaries, which we haven't started yet, but we are planning to start that later in 2024.
All right, this is all fantastic. So I'm glad I know I strayed off some of my questions that I was going to have, but I'm always fascinated, to give you a background on myself. I use
Please.
robotic mowers. So basically, I own started a snow plowing company in Illinois in '99. Somehow ventured into landscaping, but I went to school for small circuitry and analysis and was an electrician. So I was hooking up robots in the early 2000s when everybody thought this was the dumbest thing ever, and I saw how the problem it solved. People falling asleep on assembly lines. I mean, these are all the things I saw when I was working in that space. So I've always had a fascination for automation, and being in the landscaping industry, we got into that automation with mowers. And now I pick up golf balls and I clean the golf balls automatically. So I'm always interested in the parallels in our industries and the industry you're trying to serve, because it is very hard for these industries to find people. And there seems to be a resistance to the solutions people like you and myself are providing, because people think we're taking jobs away, but there is no one there that want those positions. So do you have any insight on why? Why do you think the food industry is short on personnel?
Multiple things on the Joe. Like the first thing is there is a shortage of labor in general. With the pandemic, there is a portion of the community that hasn't really got back into work. If you look at a couple of years back, things have changed a little bit right now. But if you look at the 2021s and 2022s, most of the people had to stay back home because most schools were not even ready to open full scale. They have online learning, which means they had to take care of the kids. A lot of daycares weren't even open at that time. That's also a significant portion of our senior citizens, because of multiple health reasons, could not go back during the pandemic, and that all created a huge void. And that actually stretched a long way. With the spending that happened in the last couple of years, with all the inflation, there was a huge vacuum that was created, where there was a huge demand in terms of every ingredient, not just food for that matter. We're talking about clothes, we're talking about everything. There was a disruption of the supply chain there, and on the other hand, you don't have enough labor to fill that gaps. In fact, on the other hand, if you look at Europe, as I mentioned, the Brexit in the UK created a huge void in terms of the workforce that was coming from mainly in the Eastern Europe or other countries or into the UK. And all those things actually created this huge void across the world. And and that's where I believe like automation would be able to come and solve those issues, fill in those gaps. And this has been the case all the way through in history. It's not just about what happened in the recent couple of years, but the computers is an example that I would give. When the computers entered into our lives, into our day-to-day lives, mainly in the 90s is what I would say. Before that, computers was supposed to be, with the IBM, with the NASA's, but never into the day-to-day life of humans. But when they entered into the human lives, we all thought like computers are going to steal our jobs. They're going to, create a huge unemployment all across the world. But that's not true. In fact, computers actually changed the way we live. They actually changed and improved the quality of human lives. And we could survive the pandemic, for that matter, just because of computers and remote work that the computers could create. Similarly, like with the entering of robotics into our day-to-day lives, we would be able to address a lot of issues. For instance, the food robotics, for that matter. Let's talk about a city in remote Texas, which might not have a good, fine dining restaurant because there's a lack of chefs or people who don't want to go to that particular city or that particular village. That's where robotics can help. Our solution can be installed in that small village as long as the financials works there, the numbers work there. They can install it in their village, and a Michelin chef can enter the program of how the recipe is, how their pasta can be, and the remote village in Texas can be served with high quality food. So things like that can be addressed with the help of automation. Not just that, like we're talking about this on the other side of the world. We're actually working with a customer who are a huge nonprofit that serves that feeds a lot of hungry infants across the world. And for them, like cost is a huge factor. They want to reduce their overheads. They want to reduce their their total cost of operations. And a solution in automation is something that would really help them. That's what we're doing for them. So definitely, it's going to improve the quality of our lives. The worries that everyone would have, I believe, history would answer that it's not true.
So I think your answer was a perfect answer. I'm glad I asked it. And I think that also, especially in the industry you're serving, so ironically, the landscaping industry was considered an essential service during COVID, but a lot of restaurant businesses were not. So I know that personally, I picked up a lot of people that came from the restaurant industry, servers, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, that were all kind of like, yeah, there's dining is closed down. I'm getting out of that industry. So, I believe, you brought up hygiene, like, you have a sanitary system that you can make sure is clean, working on it. You have a consistent piece of equipment there making something. And then when you look at founders, when I look at anybody that I know that owns a restaurant and they're the ones in charge of making these recipes, whether they have a full-time chef with the owner and they're doing this stuff together, it gives them better quality of life, right? That's the other thing about automation is it increases these people's quality of life because they can take off on a weekend when it's the busiest day for them and know that they're going to get consistency, right? I mean, that is the problem. One of the things you're solving.
Exactly. So. And to add to that, Joe, like, you mentioned about, your local pizzeria that you love, the scalability, for instance, if the pizzeria wants to expand and start up shops all across the world, definitely, automation would help them in terms of providing the same consistent pizza that they served in your city to everywhere in the world.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. So I'm going to kind of get back on track with some of the questions too. So I mean, Nala Robotics is just one of your your visions and businesses you have. You want to talk about some of the other things? I mean, I see you're director for Advanced Soft International, Best Brains. So get into a little bit of that too, a little more background on yourself in the business space.
Sure. So once I graduated my engineering, I took over the family business, which is Advanced Soft. It was started by my family a few years back. We are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, in fact. And it started with Advanced Soft, and we've seen the dot-com burst in the early 2000s, in fact, where the business, which was booming, doing amazingly well, had a huge pile of bills and no revenues at all. And we've seen the dot-com burst at that time. And similarly, in the year 2008, we've seen the financial meltdown, and the same thing repeated again. Ever since then, we wanted to diversify, make sure that no matter how the markets are, it wouldn't impact the business as much. And as a part of the journey, we started Best Brains Learning Centers. It is an after-school learning center program for math and English. Currently, we have 160 locations across US and Canada. And as a part of diversification, we went further and started the breweries that I was mentioning about. We acquired a couple of breweries in India and one in Colorado, and expanded into the F&B space through that. Similarly, I've established another company, along with Nala, called Ajay Robotics, that will be addressing the current other pandemic that we have in the US, is what I would say. The mass shootouts in schools and universities that's happening. So we are building robotic solutions in a way that it can address or protect the kids a little better than what we currently have, in fact. So these are the areas that we are primarily diversified with small other businesses that we have.
So how do you I've been excited about this because people think that I'm too distracted. I had somebody say the other day in the lending market, that if I just stayed focused on one thing, I'd be better off. But they don't understand my brain, and I feel like you and I we have the same type of brain, whereas I feel like I function better hopping around back and forth into these, because the biggest issue I have in my life is boredom. Actually, if my idle mind puts me in an uncreative state. Do you find the same thing? Because seeing all the things you're involved in, I feel like we are similar people.
I totally agree with you on that, Joe. The way I look at it also is each business would complement another one. The knowledge that you gain on technology would complement another industry. In fact, as I mentioned, when I was in the technology industry, and then I looked at the schools thing, and me owning my own learning centers, I felt like there's a huge void there. So each business would complement another one, and it's more of the way I would look at it is the distraction wouldn't be much in a general scenario, as long as you're able to balance the times well. And it's more about forming the right teams. In fact, most of the roles that I perform are I'm the director for the company. I'm going to be directing the paths for that, sharing my knowledges and my experiences on that. I'm not going to be taking care of the day-to-day activity in terms of the day-to-day management. That would be handled by a different team. In fact, so as long as you form a team and you direct the companies properly, you should be able to multitask. In my opinion.
Yes. Well, and at the end of the day, you just said it. You're leading. You have the vision, and then you're leading those teams. So by having multiple experience to pull off of, how do you think all of these experiences are shaping you as a leader? I mean, we're all growing as leaders, right? So go back to when you first started to lead teams where you are now. You want to give me some examples, or maybe the evolution of where you think you are as a leader currently?
When we started, when I was started the entire thing, I was looking at every aspect of it. In the software company, I started with mainly programming as well as taking care of the sales part of it. I would look at every tiny bit of it and try to manage these things. Trying to be a jack of all trades back then. But what happened all the way through there is I realized that the efficiencies are not being met with that thing. And what I realized is the focus of things should be more of towards management of it. Try to find the right person for the right department. And ever since we realized that, we started working on that, identifying the right crew, identifying this thing, making sure that we take care of our teams well. And even with the teams, we noticed that every 5 to 10 years they get bored of their job. They space out after some time. Having multiple businesses, we could balance that. We could move them from department to another department, or total different domain for that matter. That actually helped them as well stay with our company for a long time. Our employee retention is pretty much very, very high. Even through the pandemic, we are still at 90% in employment retention now. And that's, we believe it's because mainly of the transferring of them between various departments and making sure that they're still seeing their growth, but not getting bored of the day-to-day tasks.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because that's something that I'm noticing myself, is the ability to move key talent that you connect with as a leader, right? And when they start to feel burnt out at one place, you don't have to just lose them. You can offer them the same thing we have as entrepreneurs and leaders, is that ability to kind of float around and move away from something and move back to it. So I love that you brought that up, because I think that's a point that a lot of people miss, when they say, well, you got to stay focused and keep people focused on one thing. I find people lack creativity when they get stuck in a rut, so, and I always want my people to be as creative as possible, giving me as many ideas that we can, as they say, cream rises to the top. You can bring those great ideas and move them up the chain. So that's a great point. So are there any things that you started? I mean, of course, myself, my latest and greatest ideas are always kind of top of mind, but I also know, believe it or not, the favorite company that I've ever started was my snow removal company, believe it or not. So that's kind of like my first child, so do you have like one of your core businesses that are kind of like your baby, your firstborn, or you know?
On that aspect, that would be Nala for sure, by far. It's an aspect where it's an interesting aspect, coming from a technology world, and entering into a field that hasn't been explored, well enough, and the overall, problems that we can solve with technology. Nala excites me in the most, and also like equally strong is, I would say, the learning center chain. I love spreading knowledge, in fact, and that actually, every time I walk into a school, that actually helps me and energize a lot. That we're able to share knowledge and making sure that the future generations are being provided quality education. So definitely these both will be on top of my list.
Yeah. Well, I mean, best brains essentially, you're kind of like feeding your own programs, I suppose. When you think about it, I mean, you educate, and you said English and math, right? Is that what you guys are doing? And maybe, you never know, these students you're educating, they could end up being part of your team later on in these projects. Have you ever had that happen before, or no?
Totally. In fact, they will be part of my team, or I wish I would be part of their teams at one point. Yeah, knowledge would always go a long way. So we believe like sharing the knowledge and making sure they are enriched in math and English primarily, with all the STEM thing that's happening in the world. We believe that's going to solve a lot of issues. They're going to be the future doctors, engineers, lawyers, or even robotic scientists, or whatever we want to envision them. Yeah, definitely that's something that excites me the most.
Yeah, it's awesome. So how large, explain the team you had to assemble to get Nala where it's at over the past 6 years, because of course you didn't do it yourself. You keep talking about your team. So why don't you tell me a little about the team that got you to where you are today?
Sure. So when we started, again, coming from the software industry, we were always, we always had in the software industry, it's a very common thing for us to go on-site offshore. We normally call it, 80% offshore, 20% on-site. What that means is like the core talent, the engineers, the brains behind will be based onshore or on-site in the US, and the coders, the programmers, where a job can be scaled easily, can be sent overseas, in fact. And that was the thing in the software industry, and that's happening even now. Every single day of the software thing, we were talking about all the major software giants, but it hasn't been implemented in the robotics industry, is what we've seen, in fact. So what we did is we started with this model where the architects, the core team, the designers will be based in the US, and the programmers, and the electrical engineers, the PCB designers, and all those things will be based offshore. So we had an office based in India. We started with a team of 7 people, over there. Currently, across both the offices, we have 250 employees, 20% in the US, in Arlington Heights, Illinois, and the rest of them working from India. in the like we started an office in Ukraine in Kiev, but unfortunately we had to shut that office down with whatever has happening in the world there. But our idea was the Kiev office would take care of the European operations. Now we are looking at starting a new office in Belgium to handle the European operations.
Yeah, that's a shame that that office started and then the war happened. That's one of those hindsight situations, I suppose. So were you able to get, I mean, were the people that were in that office, are they safe and okay, or uh, any
A
updates
couple
on
of them
that?
went into a couple of them went into service. A lot of them actually moved out of the country. They are still working remotely for us, trying to find a home for them. And as I mentioned, like when we start our office in Belgium, a few of them might come back to that office.
Yeah. Yeah, you never you know, small world when you think about it. So come
Huh?
on a podcast and hear people that are on your team are affected by that. So you know, our thoughts are with them. So hopefully that situation gets resolved. So um so I don't know if you can talk about this or not, because sometimes it's hard in automation, but what makes your system unique to other like robotic chef technologies?
Yeah, sure. There are actually a couple of companies in the same space, in the same robotic space, robotic kitchen space. But if you look at the technology or the solutions that we provide, they are way different, in fact. So the other companies currently are focusing on one particular task or one particular dish, for that matter. That's where we go above and beyond that. The reason for that is if you look at when we're talking about saving labor, when we're talking about like consistency, it's not just one task that a restaurant would do. There are multiple other tasks. So what we do is we give end-to-end solutions. As I mentioned about the pizza, it's not a task we just put it in the oven and take it out of the oven, or put it in a fryer and take it out of the fryer. There's a lot more to be done, and along with that, in fact, otherwise I wouldn't be saving the labor savings that I'm promising to do. It can only be saved if it's handled right from the beginning to the end, and that's where our solutions are different for whatever that we provide, for our solutions that we provide. It goes end to end in a way that human labor can significantly be reduced. Also, we have solutions which are very unique in the market. For instance, the dishwasher. We had a survey done a few months back, and the the outline of the survey is everyone wants dishwashing to be automated. They see a huge vacuum in dishwashing, and no one wants to touch the job either in a restaurant or at home. So that's where we started working on this solution, and we made it commercial late last year. It's called Spotless, where you would take care of a dirty dish, empty out the leftovers, rinse it, and put it through a dishwasher run. And once the dishwasher run is done, it would take it and stack it on your shelves. So we take care of end-to-end solutions like that, and that would make sure that significant labor problems are addressed and consistency is preserved all the way through.
So how do you manage space? So as you're saying this, so like let's break down the dishwasher. So if you got a dishwasher, I'm assuming there's an arm that's moving around. So you know when you've got space confinement issues in a typical kitchen, how do you fit your system into that?
That's a very good question, Joe. Like if you look at it, just think about the robot is another human. When it's a human, we forget about the space requirements there just because you expect the human to be mobile and move from place to place, and that's exactly where our solution is different. So our latest robots, they're all mobile. They can autonomously navigate through the kitchen, just the same way a human can do. The arm lengths of the robots are pretty much similar to our arm lengths. In fact, they are faster than a human in most aspects. At the same time, like they've been given enough sensors to make sure that they collaboratively work with a human in the same field, so that they don't hit each other, kind of a thing. Yeah, definitely. Another space part of it is exactly what a human would. The newest robots, they fit into a 2 by 2 square feet of space. So 2 feet by 2 feet is what normally an average human would take, and that's how we built our robots to fit into existing kitchens, to make sure that with very little modifications that are need to be done to an existing space.
So that's very cool to me. So yeah, because I mean, I was assuming, and I'm glad I asked the question, so the listeners could understand that. You know, I mean, I was assuming there's like a fixed arm, and that arm is like moving around in a space. So I was envisioning like kind of like a marked off area, stay out of this area. But so it's basically just mingling or intermixing in with the staff that's there. Um, so then what do I mean, it's doing the heavy lifting or hitting, we'll call it. So how many people do you think it changes? Or like let's say if a typical restaurant had one person, because I don't think it's one person doing one task. So how do you mix that in also to work in their typical workflow? I guess that's the best way to ask the question. How do you
That's
make
that's a
that
good
work?
question, Joe. Yeah. That's a good question, and that's where actually, I would say our technology is different. As I mentioned, our robots are now autonomously navigable, like and they can navigate through any environment. They can change tools, like in a matter of seconds. What that gives is the same flexibility that a human has. Now, our robots can make a sandwich for you in the front, and during an off-peak hour, go back and do your dishes, come back and make a pizza for you. So it can multitask now, and that's where we see there'll be significant savings in terms of the cost. In the evening times, when nobody's there, it can probably mop your floor, and keep it ready for the next day morning. So that's where our solutions are different in a way that we want them to replicate most actions that a human can do, and they can work around the clock, and that would bring down the cost of operations. The payback time will be much faster.
Yeah, so it's amazing because I mean, my mind is like percolating here as you're talking because I have a friend of mine that's in the restaurant space and he wants to get into my space with these robotic lawnmowers because he's so tired of, he just can't find people. And I literally, and I'm going to say his name is Jason, and I'm going to send him this podcast when it's done. So he contacts you because he can actually automate his space that he's a genius in, and this is why I'm so excited when I bring people like yourself on the show, because until today I didn't even know this existed, and everyone should know this exists. So, how do you guys like market this and get this out to these entrepreneurs that own these restaurants? I mean, is your main thing getting out to like larger chain type restaurants, or is it a mix of both?
I would wait for Jason's calls, and uh, the current way it is like we attend a lot of trade shows. We get a lot of visibility during trade shows. We will be at the NRA show that's happening in Chicago next month, in the month of May. And most of the solutions that we provide, they fit both a large QSR chain, with 10,000 locations, to a small shop that wants to automate and kind of scale, or have a passion, or someone who's a visionary to adapt technology into their existing space. So we do take both the solutions the same way. When it comes to large QSRs, as you know, the process are normally longer in terms of the approvals, as well as the kind of customizations they need will be very specific. When it comes to a single shop, or a small chain, their requirements will be much different in terms of like they can change their menus overnight. They can create new things, by whatever's available in the local market. So there's two different solutions, but we take both of things, actively, and currently we're addressing both of them.
You find, I mean, obviously procurement and stuff takes longer with the bigger companies, but do you find some of the smaller restaurant owners are easy? Is it easier to show them the vision of automation, or is it harder for them to adapt it because they're too involved all the time? Like,
I would say
sorry, like their inability to relinquish control. Do you ever find that being a problem for you?
I would say both. In fact, Joe, like if let's talk about QSRs. Okay, we have QSRs who are like, we're ready to automate tomorrow. This is beautiful. We have this huge staffing issue now. Let's automate tomorrow. And we have other companies, in a way that, like, one of the companies, the large chain that approached us, they were like, the best thing we did in the last 10 years was have a automatic, cola vending machine. So they're very slow in terms of moving. And on the other hand, like, if you're talking about like smaller chains or smaller restaurants, some are very active in terms of they want to have a new solution to whatever it is, or they want to scale faster. They have a awesome recipe, awesome demand for their restaurant, but they're not able to open a shop on the other side of the world. So definitely both are being addressed, and the customer as well. Like they have, you cannot really, I think, categorize with QSR and smaller shops. It's like more of the the leadership there, what they want, of how active they are in adapting technology into their kitchens.
So do you ever find people get nervous about inputting their recipes into your system with fear that their recipe gets out like in the just public domain?
So it's not in the public domain, Joe. Like each and every, it's a secure database that they get access to, and the database will stay within their kitchen. In fact, we will be installing hardware within their kitchen so that it stays within their kitchen. So it's pretty much secure, and they won't have to worry about it. It's encrypted, so it's not easy to to copy the database and or copy the recipe and replicate it.
Yeah, so in many cases it's more secure than if they had a human that left rogue and said, I'm taking your recipes with me.
Totally, or write on a sheet of paper and put it somewhere. It's more secure than that.
Yeah, well, because I know that's a question. I mean, even the restaurant owner friends that I have, I'm sure they would ask, like, yeah, I'm going to give it my recipe, and then who knows where it goes? Is it in the cloud? Where is it at? But so that's interesting, and I'm glad I asked that question also because I've kind of like strayed away from some of the pre-show questions because as we're talking, I'm literally starting to try to think of questions that people are going to ask me about this episode, just being in automation. So I hopefully appreciate. I'm kind of going off into the weeds here a little bit with you. So, looking at our time, I always like to take time on this show to learn, about the people behind the business, because I feel like family in a lot of cases ties us into what we are passionate about. So, talk to me a little about your background, growing up, so I can start to see the things that inspired you to be such a great leader.
Yeah, so we're a family of four, with two siblings, myself and my brother. And my brother was a decade older than me. He moved to the US, in the early '90s. Started AdvanceSoft, and scaled it while I was still in high school. And so when AdvanceSoft took off really well, so from day one it took off really well. And by the time I was done with high school, I would actually spend some time in AdvanceSoft, kind of learn like what's happening in the technology world. I started working on Oracle database at the time, and then started working on SAP, more of like playing with it, see on how deep this algorithms can go, how deep the program would go, and so that inspired me a lot, and all the way through. And so I did my bachelor's in India, and then for my master's, actually moved to Canada. I was in Toronto, and started exploring various. I see that's a different world, and my Canadian experience actually helped a lot. Is what I would say. It's a lot different, and it's also almost the same, but a lot different in terms of the work culture. It's a lot different in terms of how the work-life balance is than here. So that actually helped shape, more of how do I treat the employees, or how do I balance their time and their the the workload that they have. So all those things, definitely help. But my Canadian experience helped me on that thing. And later, I moved back to the US. That's when after the dot-com burst, like the software industry was picking back again. So I could help the family business grow back to normal. But as I mentioned, we've seen the financial meltdown again. And all these things, the dips actually helped us reshape and how we balance the company in terms of the spending, or in terms of the reserves. We made sure that no matter what comes across, the company would not take a huge hit, and we would be able to sail for the next big wave, in fact. And so all those experiences in my life actually help us navigate. Yeah.
So, do you have a family yourself then?
Yes, yeah. I have a daughter. She's 8 years old. She loves robotics, and she has her own recipe. Every time she goes to a restaurant, she'll be like, "I want my own recipe." So, and yeah, she's looking forward to taking care of Nala in the future. So hopefully that works out well.
So, what is her recipe? I mean, you don't have to give the ingredients, but what is she making?
It's her own fried rice. So she has her own fried rice, which she loves. So every time she goes to the restaurant, she would punch in her own this thing. It's less spicy. She doesn't like onions, so she removes the onions out of it. So she made her own this thing. Looking at the fried rice recipe, she took out the elements that she doesn't want, and we entered into the robot. And every time she goes, she gets that.
So, how many restaurants are you guys in?
Okay.
Yeah.
Currently, we only have one showcase kitchen in Naperville, Illinois. The rest of the things we actually being piloted across several companies right now. More than a dozen companies are piloting our solutions, and we should be able to. We're expecting we will have around 10 to 12 installations later this year.
So so like if I wanted, because I mean I'm in Illinois too, so if I wanted to bring my friends to that restaurant, do I just call and we set up an appointment with you guys, or is it like you just walk in and you dine there like normal, or is it a restaurant to like tour or learn about the product?
I would recommend scheduling an appointment a little ahead of time, mainly because sometimes the restaurant gets really busy and we will not be able to show the entire operations of it. Particularly on the weekends, obviously, like any restaurant would be a little busy, or the lunch hour or the dinner hours. But yeah, definitely we would recommend scheduling a meeting, and yeah, you can come to our restaurant. We are at the Mall of India in Naperville, right opposite the Fox Valley Mall, if you know where that is. Yeah, we can visit our restaurant, and we should be able to show you how robots make food for you.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is like I've got a dinner date now. This is great. So now is your daughter the only person that gets to input her own recipe, or is that something that you guys allow people to do at the restaurant?
So we do have a feature in this thing called immortalize your grandma's recipe. That's what we call the feature. So anyone with their favorite dish, they can add in their ingredients, adding the process for that, and save it, and you can order it anytime you want to place an order through a restaurant.
That is so cool. So I mean, I've got to tell you, I'm building a house right now, and I saw there's a restaurant for sale. And as I'm talking to you, it's not a restaurant. There's nothing in it. It's just a building. And now I'm talking to you, and I'm like, man, you're like inspiring me to say, well, I could buy the restaurant, staff it with automation, the or at least not staff it fully, but partially. So do you guys like, I mean, how far into helping uh an owner or entrepreneur do you guys help to set it up? Okay, so in meaning like if I sent you showed you a bare kitchen, do I just show you that diagram and you say this is how it'll all work, or how involved is your team?
So if it's a new restaurant, I would say we would help you keep it ready for the future, in fact, because future we believe is going to be robotics and technology in the kitchens. So we would help you be ready for the future. For instance, a small thing is I would dedicate a small room for charging the robots. Like the robots the batteries have to be recharged every few hours. So probably I would dedicate a space where you can save your battery, just like if your car is being Tesla ready, or electric car ready, if your house is being electric car ready. We want to coordinate in terms of getting your restaurant to be robotic ready.
Okay. And then speaking of charging, you brought that up. So I mean, I'm assuming since it's charging every few hours, it's actually using small amounts of electricity. It's not going to like a restaurant owner is not going to have to put in a whole separate sub panel to charge their robots. So what type of amperage do your robots take to charge up?
Typically, again, it's more of like what solutions you want. Your throughputs would define that. But the mobile robot that I was talking about, it runs on standard 110 volts, 10 amps is what it needs. So nothing more than your cell phone charger is what I would say. They use very little electricity. Typically, they discharge at like 1 kilowatt an hour. Now, so it's 1 unit an hour is pretty much the basic is what I would say.
Okay.
So nothing fancy needed.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I asked a question on that because the you brought up, kind of like having an infrastructure ready to charge your electric vehicle, but those take a lot of amperage to charge up because they have to store it for a long time, and it takes a lot of energy to move a car at 60 or 80 miles an hour. And so I just didn't want people to draw that parallel and instantly be like, oh, I'm not gonna have enough electricity. So yeah, so that's easy. So anybody listening, 110 volts, this is not that difficult. Most outlets have 20 amp capability. So one robot, you could plug into pretty much any outlet that's probably in that kitchen if you really needed to. Um, so, do you have, okay, so like you brought up that there's some family background in business. So would you say your brother was probably a mentor? I mean, you were in school when he started and scaled that company. Talk about some mentors in your life.
I would say both my dad and my brother. Both of them come from engineering background. My dad actually runs an engineering college in India. So a lot of influence from him in terms of the technology thing. Whenever I get stuck sometimes, and I call the professors in the college, get some wisdom from them. And I learned a lot of business knowledge from him of how to run the business and how to manage the finances, in fact, and all those things definitely from my dad. And my brother was inspiration in terms of the technology adaptation, scaling it. He was pretty good at scaling his businesses, so that actually helped me establish the learning center chain, pretty fast, in fact.
So has your dad always run that college, or what, like when did he start running that,
Uh,
and how long?
he was more of a civil engineer for a long time. He built close to 45 apartments, and then he started a college. When he was retiring is when he started the college, so that he can spend or share the knowledge, with whatever he knows to the students.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I feel like people that have like entrepreneurship like in their blood, it's very hard to retire, right? Like I think it's great you brought that up. He retired and then he started a school, because he wanted to give back. It's like people say, my own dad will say like, oh, you got to be thinking about retirement, Joe. And I'm like that. Retirement scares the crap out of me. I don't want to stop.
So I agree with you on that, Joe.
Yeah, So, um, so what are your goals, with Nala? I mean, how far do you think you can take this? Because obviously it's technology, and you told me how your brain works, where, different things inspire different thoughts. So, you know, how far do you see this going to become a circular solution in restaurants?
Nala, I would say, like, not just for the restaurant thing. It started with restaurants, and it is being expanded into multiple other areas. For instance, we're talking about senior care centers right now. We could find areas where we could adapt it into multiple domains. And we see the future of Nala. We see is being able to adapt into the regular households. The mobile robots that I was talking about, we want them to do your dishes, and then separate your whites from your colors, and do your laundry. So that's where we see the company moving forward in terms of technology, and we see the patents that we have, the intellectual property that we hold in general, would be able to help us deliver our goals.
Well, and the more, so I mean, with the way your R&D funding is, the more robots that get out there, the more affordable you think they're going to end up being, or how's that growth model look for you guys?
Um, I mean, the definitely, like, affordability part of it, industry as a whole, like, if you look at everything in the world, like, it gets cheaper when it's scaled to a mass scale. In the restaurant part of it, I would say it's pretty much at a very affordable level. Typically our robots will be able to give you an ROI anywhere from an year and a half to 3 years, depending on how many hours you operate. But the scalability will definitely be, or the price point would be much more, affordable if it's scaled into the household market. Because when we're talking about households, we're talking about millions of units, and that would change the entire game.
One of the things I want to ask is, so you said the ROI in 2 to 3 years, depending on how much it's used. But one of the things that I found that's always differentiated me in our market, because people used to say that about robotic lawnmowers, yeah, you pay them off, that your ROI comes after year 3. But what I found is, and maybe break this down, maybe you guys have already thought about this, or maybe you haven't yet, maybe I'll inspire this thought, is, you know, people are already paying people. So there's already a cost per hour. So all you have to really do is assign a cost per hour for that robot. Is that how you guys sell through on your automation? Because I would assume that if that's the case, a restaurant could have longer hours of operation. And if you operate the kitchen longer, the cost of the robot decreases. Is that how you guys sell through in your marketing or in your sales team?
Currently, no, but we do have that thing lined up for the future. We have our trademark, rent a robot. That's our trademark. So that's something we will be launching, as I mentioned earlier, like, along with Robot as a Service. So we'll be launching it, late 2024 or early 2025.
Yeah, because if I worked with you guys, that's how I would see it is, as a business owner with, you know, hundreds of employees, I'm if I pay an employee $50,000 a year, I'm going to pay that every year, and
Yeah.
I'm going to basically just spread that cost out around the company. So, at the end of the day, I think that's how business owners need to look at it, and then to go even further, and maybe you want to expand on this, automation's like an inflation buster. So when you look at how crazy inflation is right now with labor, if I owned a restaurant and wanted to have your automation, I could probably get involved. And I'm assuming you guys have a set price. Is it set price for a year, multiple years? How do you guys set that up?
Per throughput is what I would say, like, per dish, and the throughputs that you need. So it varies from solution to solution, but it's mainly on the throughput is what I would say.
Okay. Um, so, if you were to go back 20 years ago, is there anything you would change, or are you right on track to where you wanted to be?
If I was to go 20 years back, I would say I would have started Nala 20 years back. Uh, Definitely, like, I'm like, why did I wait this long? And seeing the enormous advantages this technology has, definitely I would go back and start this thing.
See, I don't think the world would have been ready for knowledge 20 years ago, though.
Um,
If you would have tried to tell people 20 years ago this was a thing, they would have. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I would disagree there as long as you give a solution. Again, there's two things here. One is the technology, one is making it affordable. If we are able to combine both and able to give a solution, anything would be, like electric car was not invented by Tesla or Elon Musk, Uh, Electric car was invented back in 1900s. In fact, early 1900s is when we have the electric car, but it was not affordable then. There was no infrastructure for electricity back then. So combination of is the market ready is what we need to do. And I think as business people, we should be able to balance the innovation and the business aspect of it and make sure it's affordable and people can adapt to it.
20 years ago, labor would have been so much less. Do you think people would have just said, I can still pay my staff for 450 or $5 an hour, so I don't need your automation, because I don't know that the automation would have been that much cheaper. Do you think?
Yes and no. Like definitely, were a little expensive, but if you look at it, there were industries that took robotics back then. Let's talk about the car industry. From the past 30 years, the robots have been industry into the automotive industry. They make our engines, they make our cars now. So yes and no. It really, again, the car industry could find that profit point, where human labor versus market ready, is there for the car industry, and we should find that for every industry.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And by the way, this is just us having a
Oh, sure, yes.
business owner conversation. So, I look at it though, the car industry had the perfect fit, kind of like you have now though, because car industry had unionized labor, much higher labor rate. They were starting to scale these cars. They needed to get them made quicker. Then if you don't put it in a assembly line, how do you get people to stand in an assembly line all day? So for cars, it was a perfect setup, which I believe is what you're moving into now after, and not only after COVID, because I don't, one of the things that I hate is when people say like, oh yeah, your business is successful right now because of COVID, because your business is successful because you have a great idea. So I want to say like, you guys are going to be successful, pandemic, no pandemic, it doesn't make a difference. What your solution is fantastic, but I just feel like you've got to line things up in automation. And I'm only bringing this up because for me, I've been able to automate the golf industry very much easier because they cut grass 3 times a week. And in landscaping, they only cut once a week. So when you look at the cost of the automation, it's cost neutral in landscaping. But when you go to golf, I'm saving them copious amounts of money.
100%. Yeah, again, finding that right environment, finding that right ROI, and playing with the numbers is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any tough times as an entrepreneur? And I ask this because some people listening are just getting started and everybody thinks it's so easy. They're looking and they're like, man, Ajay's got all this great stuff going on. It must just been an easy road for him, so everybody deals with some adversity. You want to talk about any tough moments, or has it been pretty good for you?
Well, always, business, there's always tough moments, there's always some bright moments, everywhere. I would say like, I mean, the current industry, if you look at it, like we had ups and downs, like, my small career as an entrepreneur, like I've seen multiple ups and downs, we've seen, the dot-com bust, as I mentioned earlier, the financial meltdown, everything was gone overnight. If you look at the pandemic, half my businesses were doing amazing. The learning center was struggling on the other hand, So it's really, I would say it's hard to give a pinpoint of it. But every time, what I would say is every time there is a downfall, there's always an opportunity. Whenever there's the market's on the rise, there's always an opportunity. So really watching out for those opportunities and trying to balance the thing in a way that you should look for a long-term goal and try to accomplish that along with the short-term goals. And if you do that, I would say pretty much there won't be any hard moments.
Well, and that's why you decide. That's why you're diversified, right? I mean, your business has taught you what you needed to do, and not have all your eggs in one business. You know, so that, I mean, that's what you learn out of that. Usually that's how somebody stays motivated, but you don't strike me as a guy that needs to needs to try to stay motivated. Uh, but I mean, if you got something, what do you like to do outside of work? What's the things you like to do for fun?
I'll be doing like a lot of technology thing. I'm definitely like every human. I would love vacations. I travel a lot, so definitely travel. Makes it more fun, makes it wiser. Yeah, pretty much like no different than any one of us. It's just that trying to focus on technology is what I try to do most of the time.
Where do you like to travel? Where's your favorite place?
A lot actually. I travel to Canada. In fact, I'm actually heading to Canada later today. I travel to Canada, every few days. I travel to Asia, mainly to India, like every 20 days. So kind of like down the road most of the time.
Yeah. So what is it that, like, when you go back to Canada, what is it that you like so much? I mean,
Um,
being from Illinois, I mean, what's the difference between the two spots?
I would say it's a little relaxed, little laid back, no rush. Kind of like it's more. I mean, here it's totally different. Like we people have to struggle for healthcare. And a lot of other things that we think are hard to reach. But in for Canada, they're all taken for granted. And obviously, the tax is a little bit more there. But if you look at the quality of life there, I believe for a standard quality of life, I would say it's more relaxing. And US is a bigger market. Don't get me wrong on the in the US thing. US is a beautiful market, the largest market in the world. So if you want to conquer or get more business, nothing can beat the US for that matter. You have enormous resources, but definitely it's the market. US market is always on the run. The Canadian market is a little bit more relaxed now. So if you want to take a little break, and I would say go there.
All right. Well, I'll take that advice. So we're at the point of the show where I asked my final question, and I think I already know the answer, so I feel kind of like it's pointless to ask. But what is it that you want your legacy to be? What's the mark you want to leave on this world?
Oh, well, actually, that's a tough question. I mean, more of like I would say technology, like something to do with technology is what a contribution is what I would want to have as left as a legacy. Definitely inspiring the future generations to get into STEM, to get into I mean, to conquer the worlds is what it is. The same way we explored from one continent to another continent and discovered new continents. There's a lot more in the world that's in the universe that has to be explored, and I believe contributing a little bit of technology to accomplish that is what I would look at as a legacy.
Fantastic. You said it was a hard question, but you answered it with ease. I don't, so with that, I think this is a good spot, unless there's anything else you want to get out to say about Nala, or anything that I didn't ask. Um,
I think I answered, pretty much we discussed almost everything, and yeah, it was awesome. It was great talking to you, Joe, and thanks for having me on the show.
yeah,
Um, and definitely we want you to visit our restaurant and bring Jason as well, so I can send him as a client.